Hey fam, what's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome to the Thursday night edition of Bishop Swan Live. Y'all know on this night, we come late night and just talk about stuff, stuff that we need to talk about, fam. And I was gonna talk about all these Karens that have gone crazy. Every time you turn around, it's a new incident of one of these Karens that have lost their minds. And I was putting together a whole show that was going to be called Karen's Gone Crazy. But then I ran into this incident today with our police commissioner here in the city of Springfield, where I live. Interesting experience where she basically was talking to a group of young activists. And in that conversation with this group of young activists, she took no responsibility for any of the issues with police accountability, police corruption, police brutality in our city, and blamed community leaders for the strained police community relations, specifically calling me out, but blaming community leaders for not helping to bridge the gap, between the police and the community, something I've been doing for 30 years. I worked with every one of her predecessors. Her name is Cheryl Clapperud. I worked with her predecessors, John Barbieri. Before him, I worked with William Fitchett. Before him, I worked with Edward Flynn. Before him, I worked with Paula Mira. Before her, I worked with Daniel Spellacy. Before him, I worked with Ernest Stelzer. So a long string of her predecessors I worked with. But never has any one of them been so unprofessional as to try to single out individual community leaders as the problem with police community relations. Even if they thought that, they didn't verbalize it like that. And I've had some communications with her after. I wrote her an open letter, which she did respond to. And it's striking to me, her mentality. She believes that police brutality is not a problem in our city. We know it's a problem across America, every city, especially where Black people live, where brown people live. So her take is police brutality is not the problem. Gang violence is the problem. We need to work on black men, young black men killing other young black men. And they say stuff like that to us as if we're oblivious to those issues that exist in our community. But what it is, it's a racist deflection tactic that anytime you talk about police brutality and misconduct, anytime you talk about racism, white supremacy, anti-black violence, they automatically default to what about black on black crime? What about black people killing other black people? Even though people kill within the proximity of where they are. 90% of white people who get murdered by guess who? White people. Yeah, 89% of Asians who get murdered by guess who? Asians. It's no outlier that 92% of blacks who get murdered get killed by other blacks. Those numbers are consistent across the board, regardless of what the demographic looks like. And what she did today was do what the white supremacist trolls do to me on social media and everywhere else. Whenever we talk about the problem with systemic racism, with police violence against black bodies, with the extrajudicial murder of black people, unarmed black people in particular, they default to that conversation. We need to deal with this black on black crime. And that's what she did to me today. We need to work on young black men killing other young black men, and never conceded that there's any problem that exists whatsoever within her police department, regardless of what's right there in front of our face. I mean, multi-millions of dollars being paid out in lawsuits, scores of Springfield police officers under criminal indictment. All of this happening, and she had the caucasity, the unmitigated caucasity to tell me that police brutality is not the problem. That's not the issue, Bishop. And stop going back in the past, Bishop, talking about things that happened before. Well, you have to understand the past provides a context for the present. We need our young people to understand that this issue with police brutality and corruption and abuse of power did not start to happen in 2016 when Donald Trump got in office. This been happening. It's been happening. So we have to paint the correct picture of the history of this state-sanctioned violence. And I know that upsets you. I don't really care to tell you the truth, that it upsets you. It is what it is. It's the fact of the matter. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about what happened in the past, and we're going to link what happened in the past to what's happening right now in the present tense. And it's something about white folks who always want us to forget about what happened in the past. Now, mark my word, today's the 2nd of July. In 2 days, they've been shooting off firecrackers since May, but in earnest, they'll be shot off over the next couple of days for Independence Day, right? What is that about? That's about remembering the past, right? That's about remembering white folk getting their freedom, their independence from Britain, and celebrating and putting on tri-cornered hats and wigs and celebrating the 4th of July. They want to remember what happened in their past, but then they always want to be like, well, Bishop, why you got to go back and talk about the past? See, you don't want to talk about the past when it makes you feel uncomfortable, when you're confronted with the brutality of your ancestors and the ongoing legacy of white supremacist violence. But you're comfortable talking about the past as long as that past is about what you feel like are your heroic deeds toward patriotism. And incidentally, you know, while I'm talking about all of that, our Independence Day ain't July 4th anyway. In fact, I need y'all to check out Sister Amika Zara Black. Um, go to Instagram, go to Twitter, and go to authorities. Okay, it's AUTHORITEES, like t-shirts. Authorities. Check her out. That's don't hate my Independence Day. You see that? June 19th, 1865. That's the day. That's Juneteenth. That's when the slaves in Galveston, Texas found out that they had been emancipated 2 years earlier. And so this is our Independence Day. We already had our Independence Day. So later for the 4th of July. Like Frederick Douglass said, what to the slave is the 4th of July. So I want to talk about this police brutality for a little while tonight. And I open up the telephone lines as well, get you in here to holler at a brother about what's going on. 413-337-1867, and we'll put that number up momentarily to talk about our subject matter tonight. Let me get a good song in here, something that'll motivate you a little bit, and then we'll come back with our subject matter. Tell a friend, tell somebody right now. I need y'all to share. I need you to like. I need you to subscribe. I need to tell somebody that the bishop is on the air, and we get ready to get into this conversation. Let me see what I want to play here. Remember what Mama said. All right. We'll be right back. Don't you go nowhere. Don't touch that dial. Don't just share. Just tell somebody that Bishop is on here. And we about to get crunk. Okay. Remember what your mama said. Mama, remember what your mama said. Mama, be nice, be polite, treat everybody right. Don't fuss, don't fight, try to love with all your might. Don't lie, be fair, try to show some love and care. Mama told me to stay in school, keep the right attitude. You can be anything you wanna be if you believe. Mama told me don't be lazy. Mama told me don't act crazy. Mama said never hit a lady, treat a lady right. Mama, remember what your mama said. Mama told me to be myself. Don't try to be someone else. You got to give it your best. Don't settle for nothing less. Mama told me to hold my anger. Mama said don't talk to strangers. Mama told me never do drugs. Don't hang out with the thugs. Mama said do what's right. Don't stay out late at night. Keep the Lord in your life. You'll hope you survive. Mama said respect my teachers. Don't you know that they're trying to reach us? Treat them right. Remember what your mama said. Remember what your mama said. Remember what your mama said. All right, y'all. Remember what your mama said. Remember what your mama said. 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 All right. Remember what your mama said. All right. So let's get into this. Let's get into this. What I need y'all to do. Listen. If you had an experience with police brutality, I don't care whether it's Springfield here where I live, or wherever your city or wherever your town is, I need for you to share your experience with us, if you don't mind doing that. I just, it's problematic for me, when folks stand in denial of our experience. And that's the one of the main problems I see with white supremacy is this notion that somehow if they didn't experience it, it's not real. It's if it doesn't affect them, it doesn't exist. It's not a problem at all. Um, and that's an issue. That's a problem. That's what more can I say? It's like as long as it doesn't affect us, it doesn't exist. And I think that's the reason why the chief can say to me, police brutality is not an issue. Police brutality is just a manifestation of a 400-year-old problem here in America with anti-black bigotry. It's as real as the nose on your face. Um, and we can think of all kinds of situations, circumstances, examples of people who deal with police brutality, police misconduct, police harassment. The statistics bear out that black men are 6 times more likely to be killed by police than white men. And the commissioner said to me, why did I have to go back and talk about this ham party that happened 20 years ago? As if the past doesn't link to the present. You got to talk about that because you have to show the pattern. We don't talk about George Floyd without talking about Amadou Diallo. Okay, we don't talk about Ahmaud Arbery without talking about Trayvon Martin. It's all connected. It's all connected. George Floyd had a knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Amadou Diallo was shot 19 times by the police at midnight because they suspected him of being a rapist. And he wasn't. And because he held up a wallet. Why are so many black men and women killed at the hands of police who are meant to be protected by them? Is it because the cops are racist? Is racism a driving force? What is the reason why we are so much more likely to be killed by police? What is the reason that every 28 hours a black person is murdered by police, an unarmed black person is murdered by police? Why is that? There's got to be a reason. And yes, race is a factor. It's a primary structural factor, period. You can't get beyond that. I mean, it is what it is. And I really need to, you know what I need to do? I need to show you this video because you may not be able to hear, you might not be able to hear her talk specifically when she throws me under the bus, but I think you'll be able to hear where our police commissioner, what's in this video. It's just a short snippet of about a 21-minute conversation that's videotaped. And in it, in the beginning part of it, the young activists are asking her about trust within the community. And she goes on to say, well, the problem is there are some in the community who are supposed to be helping to bridge the gap, and they're not helping to bridge the gap. And of course, one of the young ladies immediately calls out the mayor's name, and she says, yeah, like Dominic Sarno. The commissioner, of course, that's her boss. She ain't going for that. And she goes, no, like Talbert Swan, like, me, I'm the problem with police brutality. I ain't never been a cop. I ain't never shot nobody. I ain't never profiled nobody. I ain't never abused my authority and abused anybody, but I'm the problem. And then what's interesting is one of them then goes on to ask the question, does racism need to be dismantled? Does it need to be eradicated within the police department? And the commissioner basically says, that basically that's not going to happen. That's impossible. But then it takes an interesting turn, and she says that she wishes that it could happen. And here's the key word: she wishes it could happen on both sides. On both sides. And as the video ends, you'll hear one of the young activists ask, what did she mean by on both sides? Which is an excellent question, because once again, here's that Trumpish white supremacist spin on the narrative that somehow racism and bigotry that drives the disparate numbers in terms of how the police treat Black people exists on both sides. It exists from the police to the community, and from the community to the police. It's like Trump's infamous commentary after the Charlottesville incident early on in his presidency, when he talks about there being very fine people on both sides, when he's talking about Nazis, Nazis and the anti-Nazis, but according to him, it's a problem on both sides. And the commissioner talks about racism on both sides. It's this white narrative that somehow Black people are just as guilty of racism in America as white folks are. It's an asinine argument. It's an insane argument. It has no basis in anything that is factual at all. Yet they keep using that argument that somehow, we can feel okay about our bigotry because somehow Black people are just as guilty of it as we are. I want y'all to see this. I want y'all to check this out. Listen to what our illustrious police commissioner has to say.
Some of the leaders who are supposed to be helping bridge this gap, like Sarno.
Yes, like Sarno. So why don't you all come together?
And let me go back to the beginning on this. Let me go back. Now, I'm gonna go back to the beginning. I want you to listen. She says some of the leaders, and you'll hear a young lady say, like Sarno, and then she'll say, like Talbert Swan.
Because we wouldn't be showing up. We wouldn't be showing up here. We're trying. We had that religious movement front. Right. We called for a roundtable discussion. And we called for more meetings. But you know what happens is some of the leaders who are supposed to be helping bridge this gap, like Sarno.
Yes, like Sarno. So why don't you all come together?
No, you're not Black. The idea, right? That's true. The idea with that attitude. No,
See, that's the truth. You need to accept it. That's the real.
Racism needs to be eradicated within the police.
eradicated.
Right.
You know?
But can be worked on.
For either side.
Do you agree that it needs to be?
We need to work for either side.
So notice a couple things that I want you to really take note of that happened there. Notice she got extremely frustrated. There was a young lady who said to her, basically, because you're not black, you're not black or brown. Basically, that the commissioner could not understand, could not grasp the experience of us, didn't understand what they were saying because, she just don't get it. I'm not a woman. I don't know what it's like to give birth. I've been in the delivery room when all my children were born. I know the process, but I've never felt the pain. And I'd have to be a woman who was given birth in order to understand that. And so she's saying, you're not black, you're not brown, you don't understand. And the commissioner gets very frustrated, and she says, see, with that kind of attitude, we're not going to get anywhere. I mean, the white fragility is like popping out of her veins all over the place. See that attitude. How dare you uppity Negro, tell me I don't understand your experience simply because I'm not black. And then when the young lady asked, does racism need to be eradicated out of the police department? She says she doesn't think that that's going to happen, but if she could wave him, a magic wand. Negro, tell me I don't understand your experience. All right, I don't know what's going on. I'm not black. Okay, I don't know how that happened. And then when the young lady asked, does racism need to be eradicated? All right, let me see what's happening. I think I got my she says she doesn't think I got my browser happen, but, playing. There we go. If she could wave him, a magic wand. There we go. So then she says this thing about if she could wave a magic wand, she'd eradicate it on both sides. And the young lady says, both sides? What do you mean by that? She never got to answer that question, but there's this thing that somehow, y'all are just as guilty of racism against the police department in some kind of way, or you black people are just as guilty as racism against white people. And so if I was to eradicate racism, I'd eradicate it on both sides, as if that's a thing, as if that actually exists, as if there's systemic racism against white people by black people. This is the fantasy land that some white folks live in. And it's not just your average run-of-the-mill, rank-and-file, Trump-supporting, hillbilly white folk. This is the commissioner of the police department of a medium-sized American city who has this mentality that white folks are just as much victims of racism as black people are. And she really believes this. It's insane. It's insane. So not only do we have to deal with the reality of police brutality, we've got to deal with the mentality of those on the police department who actually view themselves as the victims. We got to deal with that. We got that problem. We got a problem with over-policing in our community. We've got a problem with folk who don't live in our community, who don't care about our community, who only come to it for a 9-to-5, being the ones who are policing us. That's a problem. Every single study out there has said policing and police community relations work much better when the police are residents of the community that they police. That's real. That's real. But we don't have that here. They don't want to enforce that here. They want to give people waivers and let them live everywhere but the city of Springfield. That's problematic. That's a problem. And this denial that police brutality exists only goes to further this narrative that we are somehow the problem. We are. There was an article that came out in 2018 that talked about $5 million having been spent between 2016 and 2018 to pay off lawsuits in the city of Springfield for police brutality. Here is the police commissioner telling me today, that police brutality is not a problem in the Springfield Police Department. And in the 2-year period between 2016 and 2018, $5 million spent on police brutality cases. Last year, the infamous Nathan Bill case, $1.1 million settled lawsuits in that one case. We're talking about multi-millions of dollars in taxpayer money being used to pay out settlements for police brutality cases. And the commissioner is telling me today police brutality is not an issue. How dare you tell taxpayers who are paying millions of dollars in lawsuits to settle cases for your rogue cops going upside the heads, maiming, breaking legs, snapping necks of people in our city, and you tell me that police brutality is not a problem? If it wasn't a problem, you wouldn't be paying millions of dollars to settle lawsuits. That's real. That's real. 413-337-1867. I want to open up the phone lines. I'm not going my normal 90 minutes tonight. I'm going to go up until 11. But I want to open up the phone lines for anyone who wants to call in, especially if you got a testimony, an experience with police brutality, especially those in the city here, but wherever you are. 413-337-1867. And if you want to share with us what your experience is. I don't see how anyone watches the news on a daily basis. I don't see how anyone crunches the numbers. I don't see how anyone pays attention to what's happening I don't see how anyone could be in this space, in this time, right now, where civil unrest has ensued and inundated every major city in America over the past month after the death or the murder of George Floyd, and sit there with a straight face and say, I don't see police brutality as an issue. I mean, what rock are you living under? What planet are you from? Denial is not just a river in Africa. Okay. It exists at 30 Pearl Street right here in Springfield. Denial is right there in the commissioner's office, telling us that police brutality is not an issue within the department. I've got too many people who have come to us, come to the NAACP to file complaints about police misconduct every week. I mean, every week we get complaints about the police department every week. And this woman told me, I don't see police brutality as an issue in the department. She said that. But then people like me, community leaders like Talbert Swan, they're the ones, they're supposed to be bridging the gap, but they're changing the narrative and they're spinning what we're doing. They're not telling people all the great and wonderful things that we're doing. They're the problem between the police and the community. They're the ones causing strained police community relations. Ain't nobody ever sued me. I've never been sued in my life. Ain't nobody sued me for multi-millions of dollars for snapping necks and breaking legs. But I'm the problem. I'm the problem. Seriously? Man, I tell you, I can't. I can't with these folks, y'all. I can't. Let's see. Yeah, they're going to further pay out lawsuits. Exactly. They would rather pay lawsuits than do police reform. And the problem is, that's our money. That's our money. It's taxpayer money. My house here where I pay taxes on every year, those excise taxes I pay for my wife and my car, all these taxes, the trash fees, all these taxes and stuff I pay in the city, that's our money that's going to pay those multi-millions of dollars in lawsuits. That's us paying for it. So just think about that for a moment. They're brutalizing Black people, and Black taxpayers have to pay the tab when they settle a lawsuit for the police department brutalizing our people. So we pay for our people to be brutalized. Think about the irony of that. We pay y'all to beat the hell out of us, and then we pay to settle the lawsuits when the city gets sued. That's some insidious stuff right there. That is some insidious stuff right there. It's crazy. 5 million paid, lawsuits, settlements. Yes, sir. And that was just for a 2-year period. That was just for that 2-year period between 2016 and 2018. Like I said, just last year, after that period had passed, 1.1 million was approved by the city council to pay out in lawsuits, most of it for the Nathan Bill case. And so it keeps going on and on. On and on. What's up, Evan? Calling in to interrupt. 413-337-1867. I'll leave the phone lines open for a little while longer. Ayana, what's good with you? I see my cousin on here. What's up, cousin? Let's see. Yeah, I mean, it so she's upset right now. She's upset because I wrote this open letter. They did an article about it that's out there by now, I'm sure. And I get, I understand my role as an activist, as an advocate for the community. And I understand that I got to take some hits. And I don't mind. I've been taking hits, like I said, for 30 years. I don't have a problem with taking hits. But I'm not going to sit idly by and let you run over me. Especially just the audacity. The audacity of her to blame the community for the problem in the police department. Good evening, caller.
Hello, Bishop Swan.
How you doing?
Good evening to you. I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good.
Hey, I was just calling. I'm really disappointed to hear about the police commissioner's comments. And I recently interacted with Representative Neal's office regarding, during the middle of the protest with everything that was going on. I called to ask what they were specifically planning and what actions they were taking. And, in response to the need for reform in policing all across the nation and in Western Massachusetts.
Okay.
And I wondered if you had any comments about Richard Neal's position or interactions you've had with him. I didn't get a great response from them. I didn't get a very affirmative.
Who did you speak to? Did you speak directly to the congressman or to someone in his office?
No, it was like his communications officer.
Yeah.
To be honest, it was a pretty defensive response that I got.
Okay. Yeah, I have not heard anything from Congressman Neal's office during this season. So I can't even speak intelligently to what, if any, initiatives they are championing in response to what's going on in the nation. I've heard from Congressman Joe Kennedy's office. I've heard from some of our state legislators. But outside of Elizabeth Warren's office, Congressman Kennedy's office, I haven't heard much from our congressional delegation.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I would have thought that he would, want to reach out to the NAACP and you as well. And, he stood on stage with Clapper during the protests and presented with her and stood by her. So it's disappointing that he hasn't been more involved.
Yeah, well, they circle the wagons. What happens is when we're going through civil unrest in times like these, they circle the wagons around each other and they back each other up to ensure that they protect each other's positions. And so that's commonplace. It's like when they had this prayer vigil at City Hall, and the congressman was there along with the Roman Catholic bishop who is on his way to St. Louis. And then he had another prayer vigil at St. Michael's Cathedral that they invited no black people to. They had a prayer vigil for racial healing, but the people who are hurt and in need of healing weren't invited to it.
Right. I remember.
And it was amazing to me. And then some of my friends in St. Louis, where he's headed, have told me that he's been contacting black clergy there because he wants to meet with them to talk about race relations there. And I said, well, I guess what I said about him here must have resonated, because I went up one side and down the other and said, look, this dude has been here for 6 years. He's never met with black preachers, never inquired about police community relations, never spoken out about racism, bigotry, and white supremacy. And now you're having a prayer vigil for racial healing that you don't even invite black people to. It's crazy.
He needs to show his face and really be part of the conversation and talking to the people who are doing something about the problem, rather than just showing up, trying to get a photo op, and then moving on.
And that's exactly what I perceived it to be, that it was an opportunity for the congressman, the mayor, the bishop, and others to get a photo opportunity standing beside black preachers in the wake of the George Floyd murder, and they could check that off the box. Went to prayer vigil with black preachers. Check. That's how I saw it.
Right. Well, that kind of confirms my impression from dealing with his office. So thank you for letting me know that.
All right. Thank you for your call.
Yeah, thank you.
413-337-1867. Anyone out there, you got your own experience with the Springfield Police? Love to hear it. Or just want to hear your thoughts on the matter. 413-337-1867. What happens often during these times, and here's the thing, you got to understand, white guilt doesn't last that long. Usually during times like this, what happens is they're willing to come out, be a part of a photo op, do this, do that. Every now and then, some of them will write some checks. That's why you saw Mass Mutual write a $500,000 check. They gave it to their favorite Negro. Not the ones that are in the community actually doing the grassroots mobilization and work around moving the needle on race relations. They gave it to the safest one that they could find to give it to, so they wouldn't get any backlash from the higher ups in their Fortune 100 company. But it was just a checklist item. George Floyd got murdered. Racial unrest was happening. Check, we gave $500,000 to the Negroes. Not that there's real interest in mitigating the issue of police brutality, white supremacy, anti-black bigotry. It's just, we want to feel like we've been altruistic and we threw some money at the problem, even if we threw the money to the wrong agency and didn't even throw it to somebody who's actually on the ground doing the grunt work around organizing against injustice. We wrote it to those Negroes, and now we can feel good about it. That's unfortunately the reality in our situation. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you, Bishop. Thank you for being so proactive with the stuff going on in our community. I've been watching the show, and I think so much of the stuff really needs to be talked about. I wanted to call in and talk about a lot of stuff to do with the police in schools.
Okay.
We've been working on bringing awareness to the fact that one of the now captains, Captain David Kane, when he was the head of the Quebec team before 2016, when they actually placed the police officers into the school, as soon as they got placed into the school, he was promoted to Sergeant David Kane. After that, we actually have in our possession, a few of us who are working on this, a signed affidavit statement from a witness who overheard police officers in the court saying that at the word of Sergeant David Kane, per the superintendent, they were altering the arrest records of the students in the school district. So we pulled up all of the data because the superintendent his data doesn't answer to the city. He answers to the Department of Education. And when I actually pulled up all these records back from 2012, they've only reported one arrest in the Springfield Public Schools to the Department of Education. And
Really?
Out of 2,400 disciplines, 1,500 of those students were Hispanic, 600 Black students, 200 white. And I pulled the actual statistics all the way back from 2013, and they are not reporting what is really happening in our school district. And we actually have the photos of these officers sitting in the courthouse having this conversation on real time. The photos of when it happened, of them in the court, where they're saying that their captain, he's a captain now, but at that time, Sergeant David Kane ordered them to alter these arrest records by the superintendent. And so much stuff is happening in the community. And as I'm watching a lot of young men who are being arrested and we're seeing their photoshops, a lot of these students we've identified as students who were actually children with special needs who were never properly identified as children with dyslexia or a learning disability, where they just got told that they were behaviors or they tested them for attention, and then they placed them in the public day. And nobody's having a real conversation about the corruption in the school district.
So what I perceive is happening here. Some years ago, I think it's about 7 years ago, the ACLU released a report called Arrested Futures. And in that report, they dealt with the school to prison pipeline. They dealt with discipline and arrests in public schools across the Commonwealth. And what was highlighted in that report was the fact that Springfield, the third largest city in the Commonwealth, outranked Boston, the largest city, and Worcester, the second largest city, in terms of discipline of particularly African American males within the school system. We had a big meeting with the ACLU, with Superintendent Warwick, the school department, et cetera, to talk about this issue and this problem. And what I suspect is happening, according to what you have unearthed, is they're trying to fudge the numbers now to give the appearance that they have mitigated that problem that Arrested Futures highlighted by underrepresenting the number of disciplines and arrests that are actually happening in the school department.
They, if you look, as soon as they put the billions of dollars into the school district to put the police officers into the schools, David Kane was promoted to sergeant. 3 years after, he was promoted to captain. And he has been the person in the school district for over 10 years, overseeing the police department. So they're all fresh. You know, there was a report last year that got brought to the school district about the unpaid misconduct of an administrator of a Black autistic child, and the response from the mayor's office was not to pull the Black card, and that was given in writing.
Wow.
Not pull the Black card. So when the abuse of an autistic child is reported, and the response is don't pull the Black card, they immediately lawyered up.
Now, what is the name? What is the name of the group that you're working with that's doing this research?
I'm independent. I am a advocate, and I work alongside other advocates.
Gotcha.
And I'm directly in the school.
Okay.
So I have years worth of data. I've spoken to the attorneys from the Department of Education who have actually given me the link to pull up the actual data. So if we went by the data that the department, that Springfield Public Schools is putting out there and sending to DESE, that would say the Thomas arrest never happened, or the Kylie incident didn't happen.
Really?
Or none of the students that we have who have actually been arrested, students that are personally represented by people that I know, never happened. You know, we had a young man a few years back in Kennedy who had significant learning disabilities, broke a lock, and that officer arrested him and charged him with felony breaking and entering during the day. We had another student who was a rape victim who officer picked her up during a fight. She kicked him. They charged her with assault and battery with a shot foot. These police officers have been put into the school and given full control.
And according to the ed law, the MOUs are supposed to specify that they are not supposed to be there for they're not supposed to specifically be there for disciplinary reasons.
Right, but they are. And the fear that the district has of when advocates and come along, we see everything that's happening in the school, every single thing that's happening, because there's so many students that are being represented. So it's not just, okay, this my child got arrested. It's, wait a minute, I represent 80 students in the school district. Why are the Black and Hispanic students I represented not being tested for dyslexia, but the white students are being tested for dyslexia, while the Black and brown students are getting sent into the public day schools, and the white students are getting reading programs? And this is really something that is happening in the district. And the people who sit at the forefront of it, the Sarno, Warwick, Collins, they're doing what's good for their pocketbook,
right?
Not what's good for the pocketbook of the community. And they're getting paid. They
of course they are.
Money, and so what they do is, as soon as you file a complaint that they don't like, they put their attorneys. There's a case being heard right now. It's probably one of the biggest cases in the state, Ali versus Springfield Public Schools. When you bring up tax money, by the time this case is done, they're going to spend over $500,000 of taxpayers' money to deny a Black autistic student a reading program and to cover up retaliation and abuse of power. So this is currently happening. It's set to go to hearing in 2 weeks. I need you
to inbox me and remind me that we had this conversation. Remind me who you are that we had this conversation, because I need to connect with you offline. There's some other people I need to connect you with who are doing similar kind of work and research, and the information you have is valuable and needs to be a part of that.
It is. And when I posted it recently, their attorney filed a motion to try to shut down my First Amendment right, and the judge, of course, threw it out. But they said, we don't want the community knowing how much we're spending on lawyers.
Wow.
It's public record.
Yeah, that's public information. They will try to suppress your voice at any cost. At any cost. But thank you. I appreciate the call. Good information you've given us tonight. Let's follow up offline.
Thank you.
413-337-1867. Yeah, I suspect that that there's a concerted effort to try to fudge the numbers to give the appearance that what has been identified as a problem in the schools has been mitigated somehow. And so if you underreport the numbers, Springfield doesn't rise up at the top again above Boston and above Worcester in terms of student discipline and arrests in the school to prison pipeline, particularly for African-American males. Wow, some insidious stuff, man, that's going on. But we don't have a problem with police brutality, misconduct, or any of that kind of stuff. Not in our good old Springfield Police Department. We don't have them kind of problems here. And that's what the commissioner would like for us to believe, that police brutality isn't a problem. It's a thing of the past. And Bishop, you're living in the past. You're bringing up old stuff. You're misrepresenting old stuff. If I got a quarter every time I heard that, I'd be filthy rich. Black people are not out here protesting slavery. We talk about it because it's part of the history. We're not out here protesting Jim Crow. We talk about it because it's part of the history. It is part of your bloody racist history, America. And stop telling us we can't talk about what you don't like to hear. No, hell no. Not when this weekend y'all gonna be talking about Paul Revere and the British are coming and the Boston Tea Riot and all that kind of stuff. See, y'all can go back and talk about the 1700s all you want to, but you want to tell us don't talk about the 1960s and the 1950s. I mean, y'all have got to be kidding me. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Hey, Bishop Swan. Good evening. How you doing?
I'm good.
Good. Okay, mommy's home. Okay, go see her. So I guess my thought on a lot of this stuff is, and it's kind of taking it to the end point, is what happens if the people who are in charge of all of this oppression, racism, end up being the people that Gary Webb was investigating about, who ended up killing him and somehow oppressing all of the news that he was trying to report on. And I bring him up because I've had some personal experience with the information he was reporting on. And at the time, I was stricken with this sort of guilt about seeing the information and knowing how many people specifically in the Black American community were being affected by the products he was trying to report on that were being, according to his reporting, put out by our government into these targeted communities to cause a sort of attrition. And if that's the sort of enemy,
you're talking population control.
Well, I mean, something like that. I mean, something is definitely seems to be going on at a level that is, I'm just thinking, okay, elections coming up, legit election, Biden wins. But what if the end game is we're just not in a legit system? I mean, what do we do? I guess that's kind of been my whole question for a long time. Like, what is the end game if the monster is so big and the obstacle seems that insurmountable?
Yeah, well, we've been fighting this monster for 400 years, and
for sure,
and we continue to do that. And perhaps maybe it is too big, but the survival of the fittest is the name of the game, and so the automatic instinct is for us to do what's necessary in order to survive. And of course, nobody's going to give you power. They're not going to concede power without a demand. And those who oppress you just don't stop oppressing you because you say please. I wholeheartedly believe, and I was doing an interview last night with Brother Talib Kweli, and what he said made so much sense.
Great interview, by the way.
That thank you. What he said made so much sense that many of the concessions that people and businesses and corporations have been making, they've only been making that because of the civil unrest. Because when they see buildings burning and cities burning and they see the anger and the frustration and the angst over the situation, that caused them to respond more so than any legislation or anything else. And so sometimes, it takes all of that to move people in the right direction. And when you push people up against the wall long enough, eventually that's the response that you're going to get. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know how the end game all works out, but what I know is we keep fighting and hope for a better day and for change to take place.
For sure. God bless, man. We're in this fight with you. We're not always perfect partners, being white folks and all, but we're learning, we're trying, and we're there with you, man.
All right. Appreciate you. Thank you for your call.
God bless.
All right, I'll take a couple more. 413-337-1867. Yeah, sometimes it takes all of that in order to bring about change. You can't do it quietly all the time. And sometimes you can't do it peacefully. And once again, it is not up to the oppressor to tell the oppressed how to fight against their oppression. You don't get to dictate that. You don't get to tell us whether to be peaceful or violent. You don't get to quote Dr. King, and tell us, well, Dr. King wouldn't approve of the loading and the burning. Dr. King wouldn't approve of George Floyd having a knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And I remind you that when Dr. King was peacefully protesting, y'all sick dogs on them. You turned water hoses on them. You used batons upside their head. You cracked folks' skulls. You beat people and you murdered people when they protested peacefully. So you don't get to tell us how we are to respond, how we are to protest, how we are to fight against the oppression that we face. You don't get to tell us how to do that. It's not up to you. You don't get to oppress people and then tell you, here's my playbook of how you fight against my oppression. You can do this and you can do that, but you can't do this. And you don't get to tell people that. It's not how that works. Oh, boy. But that seems to be the play. That seems to be what they want to do. So Brother Swan's a little too loud, Brother, you talked about the ham party from 20 years ago. You don't get to tell me what I can talk about when I'm addressing my people. You don't get to tell me what speeches I get to give at rallies and protests. You don't get to tell me how I can inspire my people or inform my people when we're going through. You don't get to dictate that. You don't get to tell me what stories, what timeline, how far back I get to talk about. Who the hell are you to tell me, I can't talk about the ham story? Some of you are like, Bishop, what do you mean the ham story? Now I got to give it to you, don't I? There's a young man in our community in the 90s who was murdered by police. His name was Benjamin Schofield. Police officers shot him through a closed window on a van that was wrongfully reported stolen. He was unarmed. And the officer who murdered him, when the district attorney refused to file any charges against him, fellow police officers held a party for him. At that party, someone presented him with a ham. It was an old Southern tradition when they would have what was called a picnic. You got to understand the origins of the word, which is why we use outing, cookout, stuff like that. We don't say picnic. Picnic come from pick a nigger. What the good old boys did for fun. They would hunt down a random black man and lynch him for sport, for fun. And the white man who caught up to the black man and killed him was the winner in their picnic, and he would get a pig or a ham. And so the police presenting Benjamin Schofield's murderer with a ham was an old racist white tradition that happened in the police department here. And so I brought that story up recently at a rally, at a protest at Nathan Bill, the site where 4 black men were beat by off-duty police officers. And the commissioner got upset because I brought that up. That was 20 plus years ago. You don't get to tell me what stories about police brutality in our community I get to talk about. It's been happening my whole life. It's been happening my daddy's whole life. It was happening my granddaddy's life. You don't get to tell. If I want to go back to the Octagon Lounge incident that happened the year I was born, I can talk about whatever I want to talk about when I'm educating my people on the history of brutality in this city and in the nation. And it's the caucasity of folk to think that they get to tell black people what they can talk about with their people. You don't have the authority to dictate how we communicate with each other and what stories we tell. You don't get to put a line in the sand and say, okay, Negroes, you can talk about anything from this date up. Anything before this date, you don't get to talk about while you put on your tri-cornered hat and pop off some fireworks celebrating 1776. I don't get to talk about what happened in the 1990s in Springfield, but y'all about to celebrate 1776. Get the hell out of here with that foolishness. That's just crazy. That's just crazy. Oh boy. All right, let me get to my announcement section and get off the air here. So listen, what I got coming up, of course, on Sunday, we'll be streaming live from the church, from the sanctuary at Spring of Hope at 11 o'clock a.m. So tune in for that. And then on Wednesday, and we'll have our third iteration of the Bishop's Barbecue. If you missed the Bishop's Barbecue yesterday, go back and watch it. Okay, go back and check it out. There's 2 videos that are up. There's one from the 9 o'clock session, and that is with my guest Tim Wise, Pastor Mike McBride, Reverend Nelson Rivers, and Alyssa Milano. And then my late night edition with Talib Kweli is up as well. So check both of those videos out. Let me tell you the guests I've got coming up. If you don't know them, you need to go look them up, research them. I've got Dr. Keisha Blaine this coming Wednesday at 9 p.m. Dr. Keisha Blaine is a scholar, an academician, a professor, an author. She's got a brand new book out that y'all are going to want to get. We'll talk a little bit about her book. She's going to be on with me. Go on and look her up right now. Keisha Blaine, Blain. You want to check her out. I've got Karen Hunter. You all know her from Sirius XM, the Karen Hunter Show. In addition to that, she is a professor at Hunter College. She is a book publisher. She is a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. She's a bad sister, and she was born on the same day as me, April 24th. All right. So we're birthday twins. Karen is going to be with me. She's been with me several times at my local church during my lecture series. I've been on her show down in New York City. And so she's going to be with me on next Wednesday. And then I've got Funny Ada. Ida. She calls herself Ida, so I guess I got to say Ida. Ida Rodriguez, okay? Comedian and activist. Check her out. You see her on at all of the spots across the nation. She's going to be with me as well. So 3 sisters are going to be heading up to the cookout on next Wednesday at 9 o'clock. You don't want to miss the Bishop's Barbecue on next week. I promise you, there will be no raisins in the potato salad. Okay, there will only be truth served hot off the grill. Okay, so please, ma'am, please, sir, tell a friend, tell somebody. Matter of fact, you need to go ahead and just put in right now, put in a reminder to yourself, that the Bishop's Barbecue is taking place and you want to be a part of that. All right. I'm going to move on out your way. It's always a pleasure being with you on all of our platforms during our Thursday night live. We've been doing this Thursday night, late Thursday night, Bishop Swan live since the pandemic. I guess I'm stuck. So many of my followers told me they wanted me to do an evening broadcast. because when they were working, they couldn't listen to the Monday morning. I think everybody's been listening during the pandemic because many people have been sheltering in place. But it's always a pleasure. And until the next time I talk to you and you talk to me, always remember God loves you, and so do I. See you next time. Love you, fam. Peace and blessings.
You've got a responsibility to go back to Lodabar. Your work's not done just because you made it to the palace. Oh, bless the name of the Lord. But you've got a responsibility to help somebody else make it across. Thank you, Jesus. Don't pull up the ladder because you climbed to the top. Don't blow up the bridge because you made your way across. Thank you, Jesus. But reach your hand back down the ladder and pull somebody else up out of Lodabar. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. That's the name of the Lord. Somebody got to tell themselves, it's all right if you got it now. Just hold it for me. I'll be there to get it after a while. Oh, bless the name of the Lord.